Right, this will be my probably my last edit post, but not my last post-production post. I'm talking now from a lockdown edit, which is really nice to have it all sorted now. But yeah, the main reason I haven't done a post since the last one is I haven't really had much to talk about regarding what I've been doing. It's mainly been polishing and tweaking, and as you can see, the edit's looking a lot neater now. Like, well, organised at least. But big change that's gone on is that the I've done audio editing and stuff like that. So I'll talk you through what I've been up to, what's changed, and everything like that, and why it's all in the order it's in. As always, this doesn't. I won't be able to record on computer audio here, so I'll be uploading a version without commentary and stuff like that. So yeah, without further ado, I'll be talking through what I've done. I'll just briefly explain what I've done with the visuals and stuff like that. I've seen one. I've really let me mute all these again. I always forget to do that. I've significantly shortened scene one just from the point of view that I don't think it was working. It was the weakest out of all the footage I've got, and the way it's changed now, I feel it's significantly better for it. So yep, there's that. Another thing is on some of the scenes that we shot, namely the pickups and a few of these upstairs scenes here. I had quite an issue with digital grain and noise. You can still see it to some extent on the screen here, but what I've done is, as you can see down here, I've linked it in. I've taken these clips out into After Effects. I'll show you the originals, but I don't want to try and find them again. You saw them in the previous clip, and they are. I've just basically used the noise reduction effect on within After Effects, rendered it out and replaced it, so it looks. It gives this odd sort of plasticky look to things, but actually, for the purposes of this, I don't think it necessarily causes any problems. And in some cases, like with the flashbacks that we've got here, it adds quite an interesting effect to them. I think, like, it looks kind of dreamy, and yeah. So I'll go through it quickly and then talk you through what I've been up to, what's changed. Right, yep, I've reduced noise on this shot and stuff like that. It now opens up with the croissant and then goes straight into like the opening title thing, essentially. Yeah, the Dispossessed, boom. And then we come in with, we've missed out a lot of the other oven scene and stuff like that. Lost the first like Tony POV shot, so this doesn't go on for anywhere near as long as it did before. And it's got a new I think it's got a new lease on life, I guess, kind of. It just looks and feels much better than what it did. I've used as obviously it goes without saying, as this is a proof of concept piece. A lot of it's going to be using placeholder audio and stuff like that. My main aim for this project, as I've mentioned in the learning agreement, is to just prove that I can do it, essentially, not necessarily go all out and make everything finely tuned, specifically perfect on every level. I literally just want to make something that shows like an image of what I want to achieve for the extended major project, without necessarily pulling out all the stops and breaking myself, because doing this without approaching it as a proof of concept would be a bit of an insurmountable task. So with that caveat out the way, I'll explain why I've said it. Basically, there's I'm using non-original audio. I don't know what you'd call it, copywritten stuff. So there's stuff from soundtracks and things like that in here that I think of. Things like, I've got the Pingu theme tune here. I've got audio from Halo 4 and some stock porn music, that kind of thing. I've put wherever possible where it's been time efficient to record my own audio, I have done. But on certain things where I haven't been able to get I haven't been able to get a composer or anything like that, I've used used tracks to get the point across from what I want to achieve, without taking away from the drama of the piece. So yeah, with that I've used There's a track here from the Moon soundtrack, the Sam Rockwell film. Uh, yeah, obviously Pingu from Pingu, and audio from Halo 4. But the thing is these are kind of so far in the background that they don't really, they're not integral, if you will, but they just add something nice to the scene that gives it a certain amount of polish. So yeah. And then we go back into the POV. I tweaked a couple of the scenes there, changed it round so we had something of Mark turning around without the POV of Mark turning around, because that wasn't it wasn't nice footage to start with. Yep, and then we cut there, and we go straight into scene 2, where I've played with here. I've just layered up the gameplay audio, so there's kind of almost a visual gag there of or auditory gag, in that the scene opens up, this black screen, and there's all this gunfire and stuff like that, and then it's immediately transposed with just footage of people slobbing about playing the Xbox, which is probably quite funny in my opinion. But yeah, scene plays out more or less the same as it did before, with the flashback. I've used noise reduction on this, and it's not too unpleasant. And yep. So we've got the other thing I chose to do was, while in terms of the narrative, originally they paused the game after Paul's flashback. It didn't come across quite right, because there was a moment where Luke pauses the game, and it just serves to disorientate the viewer. So I've decided that the gameplay audio is going to be that ambient track underneath that's just going to carry on through and everything like that. I've added to the porn sound effects. I've added a low pass effect, which kind of gives the impression that it's coming out of speakers, which kind of adds a bit of depth to the scene and stuff like that, and it doesn't come across as so odd, because, as someone pointed out to me, it sounds a bit like people might confuse it for Tony screaming or something like that. And then yep, we go back into the scene as it was. We've got, oh yeah, that's another thing. We've had, luckily enough, some of the composing stuff that one of my friends have done for me is he's composed Psycho.wav here. It's just a complete, a rip-off in every sense of the word of the Psycho shower scene there. That kind of noise, like the strings, sharp strings and stuff, and it kind of adds a certain something to the sudden flashbacks, and it's sort of a bit humorous, I guess. And then I've reduced the amount of flashbacks as well, because I originally had them after each line was delivered, but it just came across as too much, so I've since tweaked them and changed them a little bit. And then into this one, which has also been noise reduced, but I think it adds this quite nice pastel-y effect, which is sort of how I actually kind of envisioned Luke's flashbacks to be, like this kind of sort of pastel-y, nice sort of Technicolor world that he lives in. And then we've lost as well, I've completely taken out the, if you remember rightly from the previous one, I removed the scene where Mark goes up and opens up the cupboard, because it wasn't funny at the end of the day, and I had to be quite ruthless with it at this point for my own peace of mind more than anything. And yeah, so I've since taken it out, and then literally the scene ends with Luke having a shrug, and then just cut straight to the other scene, in which we've got the screaming and stuff like that in the background. This is all the ADR stuff that I've recorded and things added in, and yeah, and that's added a lot of depth to the scene. Once again, I added a low pass to this scream here to give the impression that it's coming from upstairs and stuff, so it's got this muffled effect to it, which is quite nice. Yeah, so then we got Luke gets up, goes off, followed by Mark. Then we cut through back to me. And then this scene ends with a fade. I've put in a fade down to black and a fade out of black between these two segments of the scene. Technically they're different scenes, but for purposes of the narrative I'm treating them as the same, just extensions thereof, and it serves nicely to break everything up a little bit and stuff like that. And we move in. I've added in the ominous tones from the Moon soundtrack that I had on the first scene back in on the last scene, and it once again adds depth and kind of a flavour to the piece in general. And it makes the humorous bits come across as more humorous somehow by adding the tenseness to it. It kind of offsets it quite nicely, I guess you could describe. In terms of the majority of the audio editing that I've done is obviously because it was all recorded in mono. I've since gone on to put a. Let's click this one for example. I've got a. Oh bloody hell! Has that not got what it? Should have a fill left on it. I'll have to double check these, but yeah. Well, I've put. I should have put a fill left on all of these. To maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's the channel volume effect. Yeah, that would make sense. Basically, because obviously it records in mono, I've had to fill up both the channels so it's stereo and it doesn't sound weird through speakers. The sort of big job that I had was just tweaking the audio levels and stuff like that. For example, this scene, for example, where what am I saying? Look, whatever he's doing or going through, at the end of the day, it's not our problem. For some reason, that came through really quiet on the speakers, so obviously I've had to turn up the volume on that. There's certain where I've dragged out scenes a certain amount just to get the comedic pauses that I wanted. I've had to like key out certain lines that have been delivered and stuff like that. Like here, that's a shotgun that's been hidden, like someone yelling shotgun, and that's been taken out there. And this obviously alone it sounds quite weird, but I think that's where I was lucky with things like the shopping channel and the screaming in the background. There's that bass audio track that just allows me to keep an eye out on what cover my arse really, and just keep me from having weird sounding audio. But yeah, the keyframing's obviously taken a long while, but the main thing that's sort of taken up most of my attention is things like this, where I was, as I was mentioning, with I've got these bass tracks in and stuff like that, the stuff underneath, like the screaming and the shopping channel here. These obviously I've had to be very careful in order to make sure that the volume, that neither one of them drowns out the previous, if you will. Like in terms of the narrative, the screaming is going to be drowned out by the shopping channel, and the shopping channel needs to be drowned out by the dialogue, so everyone can hear and all the viewers can hear and understand the dialogue, but still be aware that the shopping channel's on in the background, and the shopping channel is there in order to mask the screaming in the background. So all three have to be apparent without actually sacrificing. Is fidelity the right word? Maybe it's fidelity, something like that. Yeah, but that's kind of the gist of where I'm at the moment. Yeah, so to recap, talking about proof of concept and things like that, and how it's sort of influenced my work method, that kind of thing. And yeah, so I will do another post soon. This is the edit lockdown as is. It will come with, as I was saying, it will probably come with a render out of things as they are, just so you can get an idea of the process and everything like that. And then I will be doing another post tomorrow in regards to colour correction, for which I'll be using Adobe Speed Grade, which will be interesting, as I've never used it before, so hopefully I'll have learned something by the time I've next done a blog post. But yeah, anyway, boy.